Right, we're going to be doing a complete tear down on this, not just the shell, but we're going to get to the purge section, the ink pump, the power supply unit, and we can explore just how modular the components are inside a Canon bjc-80 colour bubblejet printer. If you've been watching the other videos on this, you'll know exactly what this is all about. Repairing a defective printer. But first we want to get the cartridges out. Oh, I want to get the cartridge out. Right, we're going to have to let this finish for a bit. Get the entire head off. Right, in case we have any excess ink, I do advise that you put a cloth or a lot of newspaper or something for things to tip onto. I certainly don't recommend wearing your designer velvet jacket either while doing this, so I'm going to take that out. We may want to put our heads somewhere in a suitable storage container. The power supply unit out of that. Just pop it on its side for a minute. I don't recommend doing that, but I ain't got a lot of choice here right now. Find suitable storage for it. One of these replacement containers will do. That's the scanner head. That allows you to use the scanner. It does work well as a scanner, actually. It works very well as a scanner. But we do still have printing problems. So far I've managed to get it to print black and blue, and I'll tell you how I did that as we go through the teardown video. Right, I'm just going to unplug that power supply unit. Right, we're going to flip it upside down. We have a single screw here, so we get a screwdriver and we undo that. Now, you've seen me do this probably in the first part of the video. I think that was what that was all about, so we're going to be doing this again. Hopefully I'll have a little bit more of an idea on what I'm doing this time around. Well, we can only pray. Right, and there's all these little hooks. It's basically literally a matter of pulling it apart. Might involve a flathead screwdriver. Here we go. Can get that in there. Might be able to get that out. Yeah, here we go. Got one corner off. There we go. That's the top section off. Right, this is where the head goes in. As we can see, we've got the lock arm here. If we nudge that slightly, we can pull that off. Right, this is the purge section. It contains the pump. This is used to suck the ink from the printer head cartridge. You get the idea. We're going to look a little bit more into that. Right, there are several main sections. You've got the purge section. We've got the feeder section, and then we've actually got the actual PCB. So, yeah, how do we get to this part? I think this part just lifted out. I don't think there was any screws involved. I do suggest that we take this data ribbon cable out, which removes the control board from what I'd probably say is the logic board, or motherboard, whatever your choice of word is. I'd like to probably consider it a logic board in this case. There we go. This just pulls out like that. It's a largely screwless design. There's only really a few screws that I use to keep the actual circuitry in place. Right, we're going to take the feeder section out. things can get a bit cool, so you may want to use a flathead screwdriver to pry some parts away. Okay, my fingers are strong, but they're not that strong. Right. As you can see, you want to be careful here because we've got 4 connections between the control board, which has our switches, and the actual logic board. So we have a power connector here, power connector there. Now this part connects to there, so we don't really need to unplug that. And this part, you'll need to take these. You'll see how this is connected. You've got these little crimps. You need to pull those forward, and now that will make things slide out as they should. So now we have our purge and our control feeder section away from the logic board. Battery that probably holds EEPROM data. Settings for the EEPROM data, like waste ink and things like that. So yeah, we've got an empty EEPROM bed here, which is interesting. It shows that there's probably a couple of extra functions that could be unlocked with those circuit bending. So yeah, I think this can be right. We've got a screw there, and I think there was a 3rd screw under here. This is the infrared, I think. This is the infrared section. Yeah, that's what connects here. We have a screw there. So there's 3 screws. You just undo those and the logic board just lifts out like magic. Okay, so we're going to pop that back in there. Now, caution here is that this thing has a plastic washer. Yes, it has a plastic washer which goes on like that. And there's a spring that also goes in there, so do be cautious when you open this up, otherwise it could get lost. So that's that. Right, so now we have our feeder section and our purge section. Now the purge section seemed to be the actual cause of the problem. There is a boot code where you press the cartridge button about 16 times. That resets the waste ink capacity, but I wouldn't use that solution too much, otherwise you could end up having an overflow and you could have a right old inky mess whenever you use the printer. So it wasn't just that, but the purge section needed cleaning. What I did, I dismantled the purge section, and then I put all the parts in a cup filled with isopropyl alcohol and soaked the parts for a few hours, which resulted in all of the ink looking like this. This was clear white isopropyl alcohol. So I took all the pump section parts out, soaked them in there and put them back together again. Now, one thing I want to emphasise is that when you do this, it's really frustrating to get all the parts back together. It's a completely mechanical. So what the cause of the problem was with this, it was entirely that the purge section was badly blocked, but there was also something with the EEPROM. Now, if we turn this upside down, we have this sheet of foam here. And this holds waste ink, and if you have a look here, you can see a lot of waste ink has gone through the foam and is now against this shiny clear plastic film. So yes, we have that. What do we have? God, I wish I didn't do that. Yeah. So we have the lock arm, we have the heads. Right, how did we get this out again? We devised a way of getting the purge section away from the feeder, if I remember correctly. Clips, I believe. That's it. Yeah, we've got clips here. How did I do this? It's basically been a month or more. Well, that's it. This plastic part, it's held on with a clip like that. So you push that through and you should be able to lever it off. There we go. We have that part moved off. And then we've got another clip here for this side, so again we will push that. You may want to use a screwdriver for that. It can be quite a nightmare to get off. This video is going to call for a lot of editing. Right. And now we have the purge section off. So you can see that there's three major modules: the control board, the feeder section, and the purge section. The purge section is often quite a problem for a lot of this. Feeder section is pretty good. Right, we have these here. They just come off like this. You've got these little plastic clips here. So a case of just a case of popping them off. There we go. And looks like they have a tendency of falling apart. I'll just witness that. I think these are paper guides. I think that's what these are. They allow the paper to flow into the purge section correctly, keep them fairly straight. They're highly fragile, and if they're brittle they could just snap. So do try and be gentle with those if you're going to be doing this. Right, with the purge section you've got these rollers, you've got 4 sets of metal rollers, then you've got these plastic rollers here, and this is the pump. What a lovely little thing this is. Now the problem is with the purge section is that you've got to get the gears right, otherwise when you switch it on you're going to go because the purge section is powered by that gear that we saw in the feeder section. You can see that when this goes up, it brings the suction movement up. Now this here is the wiper, which is covered in ink since I've been testing it. This wipes the head. That piece there sucks the ink from the head. It sucks the ink into the pump. And the pump is powered by this gear, which is powered by the power from the feeder section. So what I did, I pulled this part and that part and I soaked them in that isopropyl alcohol that resulted in this ink. Now, I don't really want to take this apart because it was hell getting this thing back together. But what you do, this gear here, you have to pull it out. There's no other way other than to pull it out. And if it breaks, well, let me just tell you one thing. The whole reason why this was a modular design is that according to the technician's manual, which I did find online, is that the modules were designed to be replaced as wholes, but not the individual parts. So rather than taking the pump out and having it replaced by a qualified technician, you couldn't do that. Officially, you had to have the entire purge section removed and have a whole new purge section supplied by the technician. So if this breaks, it didn't matter. Now, I do find that thankfully the plastic in mine is still fairly flexible, it hasn't gone too real with age. So like I say, you take that out by pulling it out. And then once you've got that out, you can take the pump section out. And of course the pump section was taken out if you levered this loop down with your thumb and you pull it out. So you start by pulling that out. As you can see, there's a lot of flex, so once you've got it out, you can pull it out. God, why am I doing this? Oh yeah, because I want to actually repair this. It can be fun, it can be highly frustrating. The purge section is real frustration. Mainly because I'm more of an electronics person than a mechanical person. But yeah, that's the main point of this particular video. Now to get to the purge section. The feeder section. I just want to warn you that if you take the feeder section out, you've got these, and they are sharp. You can stab your fingers quite badly with these. There's all these little sharp spikes on the feeder section. Don't mess with them too much. These. They are covered in a load of tiny metal spikes. And they're nasty. They feel nasty. They feel worse than a bug bite. Much worse than a bug bite. Right, the frame modules. The three modules, we have the control board, which contains our logic. This is an empty EEPROM, which is interesting enough. That's the battery, which contains all the EEPROM data, which is obviously more like an actual RAM than a ROM. As you see, the ROM bed is empty, so it's actually probably these little RAM chips that actually hold the data and they're backed with that battery. We have the capacitors, we have the data ribbon cable with that goes to the control feeder board, feeder logic, that goes there as well, got the spring there. Yeah, so that's the first of the three modules. Right, remember this. 3 modules. The first one is the logic board. The second module is the purge section. Right, we have pump. This is the pump. Now when I rotate the gear to the maximum, you'll see this spigot here. and when I rotate it in the other direction it goes in. And the reason for that is so that it sucks the ink from there, because underneath this little foam square is a pipe and it goes from there into the pump, and that sucks the ink from the printer cartridge. And then lastly we have the feeder module, which is the third module. So there's the first module, the second module, the third module. Now this is probably the most complicated of the three, as you can see, as it's a combination of mechanics and circuitry. Whereas if that's purely mechanical, that's purely circuitry. Now I'm quite lucky that there doesn't appear to be anything wrong with this. Right, we've got head, we've got the lock arm. We've got a completely mechanical gear section here. And that powers the pump, hence why the gears will lock into each other when the modules are reassembled into one another. And the feeder goes in there. Now it's important also that when you slot the modules back together, you need to make sure you put your paper guides back onto the purge section, because if you don't, there will be big problems. Now we saw how we got these off earlier, didn't we? So we're going to have a look at, and we're going to get these back together once more. Like that. Got these two hooks there, they slot into the purge frame, and then that hooks over, and then they cling on. There you go, they just click into place. You need to make sure you got those there, otherwise you will have problems in getting the paper to automatically feed through, and you'll literally have to assist your printer every time that you try and feed the paper through. So these are the three important modules. Right, we're ready to put this thing back together again. Right, we start by putting the feeder section and the purge section back together. Right, we've got this data ribbon cable hanging. That slots into this section here, as you can see. It's going to go in like that. Like this. Like that. And the reason why it does that, we've got these spigots here and they hinge, and then you push it all the way until this little plastic hook fully goes over this metal shaft. Let me check again for the other side. Right. Then we get this part, the logic section. Make sure that this data ribbon is underneath here. This data ribbon cable, need to make sure it goes out because that connects to the top of the control panel. This connector in here. think that's all that. Hinge that down. Should all click into place. Yeah, I haven't got that. This goes in like that. When you do that, try and make sure that this is not sticking out too much, otherwise you may have problems getting the top shell back on. And there you have it. I'm going to put the top shell back into place. Oh, make sure the lock arm is also in place. To do this, we will see that there is a spigot on the lock arm. Yeah, this little stud. Now what happens, it goes in the groove in the gear that moves the pump. So we're going to push that gear forward with our thumb, push the lock arm down, and now that little stud will be trapped in the gear, which is a part of the design. While we have the chance, we should probably put our ink head back into place if we're going to do some further testing with our repairs. Put the scanner head back in here. Screw that back into place and we know we've got the whole thing back together. Oh wowee. And there you go. Tear down and complete reassembly of the modules. Maybe one day I'll do a disassembly of the Purge section as well, as that will be useful for anyone that will want to repair ink related problems. I won't be disassembling the feeder section, however, as that works perfectly fine. Unless it malfunctions, I don't want to mess with what is not already broken, so I won't be doing that. But yeah, perhaps the Purge section.